Welcome back to the Dust Off the Bible channel. Today we're going to be answering the question, who is Melchizedek and what does he have to do with Jesus? The name Melchizedek is derived from two Hebrew words, Malchi, meaning my king, and Zedek, meaning righteousness or justice. Therefore, the name Melchizedek can be understood to mean my king is righteousness or king of righteousness. Its meaning aligns with the biblical portrayal of Melchizedek as a righteous and exalted figure who prefigures Christ's role as eternal king and high priest. In the Bible, Melchizedek appears in the book of Genesis, chapters 14, 18 through 20, Psalm 110, and the letter to the Hebrews, chapters 5 through 7. He is described as both a king and a priest, and he blesses Abraham after his victory in battle. Melchizedek is also mentioned as the king of Salem, which is understood as an ancient name for Jerusalem. The author of the letter of the Hebrews refers to Melchizedek as a type or a foreshadowing of Christ, emphasizing his dual role as king and priest and highlighting his superior priesthood to that of the Levitical priesthood. His appearance in the book of Hebrews is especially interesting, as the author appears to be referencing a number of Melchizedek traditions from apocalyptical texts that were discovered in the Dead Sea Scrolls. In the three biblical appearances of Melchizedek, his profile grows each time. The first reference from Genesis 14 is brief, and he is seen blessing Abraham after defeating the kings that took his cousin Lot captive. After Abram rescues his nephew Lot from captivity, Melchizedek, who is described as the king of Salem, blesses Abram and receives a tithe, a tenth of the spoils of war. The passage reads in Genesis 14, 18 through 20. Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was the priest of the God Most High. And he blessed Abram, saying, Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. And praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. Then Abram gave him a tenth of everything. David's view of Melchizedek, which is found in Psalm 110, is that he is the ideal figure to lead God's people, as he was both a priest and a king. He sees his lineage and future heir to the throne to be in the same type or form as Melchizedek. This idea is going to be picked up later in the messianic expectations of the pre-Christian era. Psalm 110, 2 through 4 states, The Lord will extend your mighty scepter from Zion, saying, Rule in the midst of your enemies. Your troops will be willing on your day of battle, arrayed in holy splendor. Your young men will come to you like dew from the morning's womb. The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. The third book to mention Melchizedek in the New Testament, which is Hebrews, extensively discusses Melchizedek's significance in relation to Jesus Christ. Melchizedek is represented as a type or a foreshadowing of Christ, emphasizing his unique and superior priesthood. But there is more than meets the eye in the book of Hebrews. This book also taps into the mythological interpretations of who and how Melchizedek came into being. Before we read Hebrews, let's look at some of the mythology surrounding Melchizedek, and it'll become more clear what the book of Hebrews is referring to. In the second book of Enoch, the Slovakian version, there is a story of how Melchizedek was birthed, what his role was, and what his first year or two of life was like. The tale is dated from the 1st century CE. However, from internal evidence, it would appear that it was most likely written during the Alexandrian diaspora. From chapter 71, it states, Behold, the wife of Ner, whose name was Sopanim, being sterile and never having at any time given birth to a child by Ner. And Sopanim was in the time of her old age, and in the day of her death. She conceived in her womb, but Ner the priest had not slept with her, nor had he touched her, from the day the Lord had appointed him to conduct a liturgy in front of the people. So Melchizedek's mother was barren, and his father was a priest. This should be a familiar tale if we remember the story of Elizabeth and her husband, and then John the Baptist. Nevertheless, she goes on to become pregnant and give birth to Melchizedek. And just like Mary and Joseph, there is some confusion over the pregnancy because she was barren and she did not have a child by Near. And Near thought that she had cheated on him and that the child was going to be basically a bastard child. What is especially interesting about this story is that Melchizedek was actually born after Sopanim had passed away. And a child came out from the dead Sopanim, and he sat on the bed at her side. And Noah and Near came in to bury Sopanim, and they saw the child sitting beside the dead Sopanim, wiping his clothing. And Noah and Near were very terrified with great fear, because the child was fully developed physically, like a 3-year-old, and he spoke with his lips. He blessed the Lord, and Noah and Near looked at him, and behold, the badge of priesthood was on his chest, and it was glorious in appearance. Now there is a interesting part of the story because Near is Noah's brother, so this is pre-flood, and they're concerned about what's going to happen to the child during the flood. So God actually decides to preserve this mystical priest child who seems to have been of divine origin. And this is the method in which they preserved him. And the Lord heeded Near and appeared to him at night in a vision. And he said to him, Near, the great lawlessness which has come about on the earth among the multitude I shall not tolerate. And behold, I desire now to send out a great destruction onto the earth, and everything that stands on the earth shall perish. But concerning the child, do not be anxious, because in a short while I shall send my archangel Michael, and he will take the child and put him in the paradise of Eden, and in the paradise where Adam was formerly for 7 years, having heaven open up all the time until when he sinned. And this child will not perish along with those who are perishing in this generation, as I have revealed it, so that Melchizedek will be the priest to all holy priests. And I will establish him so that he will be the head of the priests of the future. Now, in chapter 72, there's actually a twist in the story. Near, the father of Melchizedek, is concerned that after the flood, when he's returned, that he will be killed because of his special nature. So there's an agreement that's made so that the Archangel Michael will actually take him to the paradise of Eden forever. But there will be a manifestation of him on earth eventually. And here's what's said: Do not be afraid, Near, for I am the Lord's archangel. The Lord has sent me, and behold, I shall take your child today. I will go with him, and I will place him in the paradise of Eden, and there he will be forever. And when the 12th generation shall come into being, and there will be 1,070 years, there will be born in that generation a righteous man. And the Lord will tell him that he should go out to that mountain, where stands the ark of Noah your brother, and he will find there another Melchizedek, who has been living there for 7 years, hiding himself from the people who sacrificed idols, so that they may not kill him. He will bring him out, and he will be the first priest and king in the city Salem, in the style of this Melchizedek, the order of the priests. The years will be completed up to that time, 3,432 from the beginning of the creation of Adam, and from that Melchizedek the priest will be 12 in number until the great Igumen, this is to say, leader, will bring out everything visible and invisible. So then the Melchizedek that we see in Genesis, according to 2nd Enoch, is actually just a manifestation of the eternal Melchizedek who has been taken up to the Garden of Eden, which is in this particular story on a different celestial plane. With this view from Enoch in mind, let's read Hebrews 5 through 10, Hebrews 6, 19 through 20, and Hebrews 7, 1 through 21. In the same way, Christ did not take on himself the glory of becoming a high priest, but God said to him, You are my son, today I have become your father. And he says in another place, You are a priest forever, in the order of Melchizedek. During the days of Jesus' life on earth, he offered up prayers and petitions with fervent cries and tears to the one who could save them from death, and he was heard because of his reverent submission. Son though he was, he learned obedience from what he suffered, and once made perfect, he became the source of eternal salvation for all who obey him, and was designated by God to be the high priest in the order of Melchizedek. Hebrews 6:19 through 20. We have this hope as an anchor for the soul, firm and secure. It enters the inner sanctuary behind the curtain, where our forerunner Jesus has entered on our behalf. He has become a high priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. And then Hebrews 7:1 through 21. This Melchizedek was a king of Salem and a priest of God Most High. He met Abraham returning from the defeat of the kings and blessed him, and Abraham gave him a tenth of everything. First, the name Melchizedek means king of righteousness. Then also, king of Salem means king of peace. Without father or mother, without genealogy, without beginning of days or end of life, resembling the Son of God, he remains a priest forever. Just think how great he was. Even the patriarch Abraham gave him a tenth of the plunder. Now the law requires the descendants of Levi who became priests to collect a tenth from the people, that is, from their fellow Israelites, even though they are also descendant from Abraham. This man, however, did not trace his descent from Levi, yet he collected a tenth from Abraham and blessed him who had the promises. And without doubt, the lesser is blessed by the greater. In the one case, the tenth is collected by the people who die, but in the other case, by him who is declared to be living. One might even say that Levi, who collects the tenth, paid a tenth through Abraham, because when Melchizedek met Abraham, Levi was still in the body of his ancestor. If perfection could have been attained through the Levitical priesthood, and indeed the law given to the people established that priesthood, why is there still a need for another priest to come, one in the order of Melchizedek, not in the order of Aaron? For when the priesthood is changed, the law must change also. He of whom these things are said belonged to a different tribe, and no one from that tribe has ever served at the altar. For it is clear that our Lord descended from Judah, and in regard to the tribe, Moses said nothing about priests. And what we have said is even more clear if another priest like Melchizedek appears, one who has become a priest, not on the basis of a regulation as to his ancestry, but on the basis of the power of an indestructible life, for it is declared, "You are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek." The former regulation is set aside because it was weak and useless, for the law made nothing perfect, and a better hope is introduced by which we draw near to God. And it is not without an oath. Others become priests without any oath, but he became a priest with an oath when God said to him, "The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever." So we see the author of Hebrews is picking up on this idea that Melchizedek is pre-incarnate. He had existed before and after his incarnation in the physical body on the earth. And in fact, Jesus may be an incarnation of this forever standing priest and king. Now, Melchizedek, as an eternal figure, does not just go away because Christ incarnated. In fact, he shows up in some of the Dead Sea Scrolls in the end times Armageddon battle. In 11Q13, sometimes called 11Q MELCH for Melchizedek, we read about him coming with the Archangel Michael, or coming even as the Archangel Michael in the last days to do battle with the sons of light. I'm going to read a snippet from that particular piece of the scroll, in which atonement shall be made for all the sons of light and for the men of the lot of Melchizedek. And then there's some broken texts according to their works. It is the time for the year of grace of Melchizedek and of his armies, the nation of the holy ones of God, of the rule of judgment, as it is written about him in the songs of David, who says in Psalm 82:1, "Elohim will stand in the assembly of God, in the midst of the gods he judges." And about him he says, and then there's some broken texts, To the heights return, God will judge the peoples. As for what he said in Psalm 82, how long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? So here, if you recall the text of Psalm 82, where God stands in the assembly of the sons of God and judges them for not administering justice on the earth equitably, he then eventually says that he is going to judge them and that they will die like men. And here in the Melchizedek tradition from the Dead Sea Scrolls, it's actually Melchizedek and his armies that are coming to exact that judgment on the wicked sons of gods who do not do their part by allowing justice to prevail on the earth. And then in verse 14, it says, Melchizedek will carry out the vengeance of God's judgment. And on that day he will free them from the hands of Belial and from the hands of all the spirits of this lot. So interestingly enough, Melchizedek actually becomes an end times figure along with the archangel, and then is most likely also coupled with the vision of Revelation, just as Jesus is going to be the end times warrior. If we conclude that Jesus is a manifestation of Melchizedek, then it still actually fits with the Dead Sea Scroll version that the eternal Melchizedek is going to be bringing in the final justice at the end times for those who allowed the earth to become corrupted. So, in conclusion, the biblical picture of Melchizedek is that he is a pre-incarnate divine being, or at least semi-divine being, who is manifested on the earth at least twice. And the first one is probably from Genesis 14. If we follow the Enochian literature, then his first manifestation was during the days of Noah. Jesus is thought to be of the same order, or at least another manifestation of Melchizedek. And because he's another manifestation of Melchizedek, he is actually of an eternal priesthood, a higher order of the Levitical priesthood, which makes him the ideal priest and king. And what is even more interesting is David seems to be under the impression that the eventual perpetual king would also be of the order of Melchizedek. So having Jesus fulfilling this role is actually in keeping both with the Enochian literature and also with the beliefs of King David. And just like Melchizedek, having no beginning and no end because he's a divine being with a physical manifestation on earth, Jesus seems to fit that picture as well, being a divine being, no beginning and no end, pre-incarnate, but also having a human incarnation. And so we can conclude with what the author of the Hebrews wrote when he said, "And what we have said is even more clear. If another priest like Melchizedek appears, one who has become a priest not on the basis of a regulation as to his ancestry, but on the basis of the power of an indestructible life. For it is declared, you are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek."